Thank you, everyone, for joining today. My name is Bronwyn Sanders, and I am a Director of Admissions at NYU Stern. And today I'd like to welcome you all to the HKUST-NYU Stern MS in Global Finance, MSGF Alumni Webinar. So today we're delighted to have three distinguished alumni joining us to share their experiences in the program and discuss how the MSGF program has affected their careers. Over the next hour, you'll learn more about the program through the perspectives of them going through the program, hear about their professional journeys, and have the opportunity to ask questions. So whether you are exploring graduate finance opportunities or seriously considering the MSGF program, we hope today's session will help you determine whether the program is a good fit for your goals. So before getting to the panel, if you'll allow me to just do a brief overview of the MSGF program. The MSGF program is a unique partnership between two globally recognized business schools, NYU Stern and HKUST Business School. Students benefit from faculty expertise, alumni networks, and global perspectives from both universities. One of the defining features of the program is the opportunity to learn about both Eastern and Western financial markets, helping participants develop a truly global understanding of finance. The international perspective is one of the reasons many experienced professionals choose the program. The MSGF program is a one-year joint degree part-time program designed specifically for working professionals. It is combining academic rigor with flexibility, allowing participants to continue advancing in their careers while pursuing a graduate program. Students learn alongside experienced professionals from a wide range of industries, functions, geographies, really creating this highly collaborative and globally diverse learning experience. Through global classrooms and exposure to major financial centers, participants gain insights into how finance operates from different markets and regions. So one of the themes you're going to hear from our alumni today is about career advancement, expanded professional networks, and global perspectives are all direct outcomes of and aspects of this program. So our panelists today are joining us from Paris, Johannesburg, and New York, and representing organizations such as HSBC, Nedbank Corporate Investment Banking, and also S&P. Together, they're bringing perspectives from Europe, Africa, and North America, really reflecting the global nature of this program. So rather than making the introductions myself, I'd love to hear from them directly. So to get started, I'll start with C. I would love if you could introduce yourself, share a little bit about your current company, your current role, and tell us a little bit about your professional background. C, do you want to get started?
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone, I'm Zian. I'm a Malaysian Chinese with some Thai background. So I was in Hong Kong when I started the program of MSGF. In fact, it was with Bank of America instead of HSBC. So I was doing compliance as one of the director looking after on the KYC financial crime. And the reason that time why I joined the program, that was pre-COVID. I think that the program is very efficient. In 1 year that we can actually learn a lot about finance, and also the course is taking place in New York, Hong Kong, and in Shanghai. At that time, we missed the opportunity of Abu Dhabi. I think nowadays Abu Dhabi. Yes. And now we have, like students from everywhere in the world, from America, from Asia, from Europe, and everyone is very keen and interested in the topic of finance, and also how we can utilize the master to progress in our career. And at that stage, when I did this program, I was pregnant with my first baby. So you could see that, if some of you are women who are thinking about career advancement and, at the same time having a kid, you 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 can talk to me offline or reach out to me separately. But I'm sure that you can manage this during all this process of juggling, because the good thing about the program is you will have the class face to face. I think this is still the module in 2 or 3 days, and you have some pre-coursework, and there will be some of these pre-course or post-coursework to help you to understand on how does the topic is all about, in a more summary and intense way, instead of dragging long course that you need to do every week for classes, which is very typical MBA kind of a mode, that's not so perfect. From there, I actually, after my completion of the program, I got approached by HSBC, and I joined the HSBC in Asia Pacific, based in Hong Kong, covering the same area for compliance. But however, when I decided to move to France and coming to Paris, there was this credit risk topic that they would need some compliance and credit officers in the office for helping them to manage the requests coming from the ECB. And the good thing, if you have this knowledge in finance, you could actually have a chance to switch to different kind of discipline in finance. So for example, like me, I was in compliance, but with this knowledge, I can switch to credit. And from there, after 1.5 years in ECB regulatory inspection, I moved to another role, which is the current one, as a director of risk and global standards, which are covering more broader discipline, Basel, credit, financial crime, fraud. So, you see, this will equip you to actually have the skill set and knowledge, able you that to actually to do different kind of things, multidiscipline, and also for career advancement. That is why I'm always a big fan when it's coming to alumni sharing or promoting the program, because I myself, I have seen the benefits of doing it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And in a little while, I would like to dig a little bit more into the kind of pivot you made. So that's really important for us to go through. Thank you for that. Abigail, why don't we, if you could tell me briefly a little bit about your background.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Abby. I'm based in New York. I have been with S&P Global for about 7 years now. So ever since I graduated, bachelor's, and then I started. I was one of the younger people who wanted to do the MSGF program, and I chose it specifically because of the flexibility, of the efficiency, and also it allowed me to stay still very committed to my job, while making sure that I dedicate a clear amount of time to MSGF and studying. And after I completed the program, I actually got 2 promotions within S&P, and I'm very happy to stay within the company, and really happy that the program was able to propel me to different areas of the organization that I may not have had access to if I didn't have this credential. So I'm still based in New York, and very happy to be speaking and waxing poetic about this program today.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Abby. And next, Ned, would you tell me a little bit? Thank you.
Sure. So I'm Naledi. I am based in South Africa. I actually moved from Johannesburg. I used to be in Johannesburg. Now I'm based in Cape Town. So I was working in asset management when I actually did the program. So that was in 2022 to 2023. And it allowed me to actually, see more of the financial services space, or finance, basically, outside of the little slice that I was actually involved in asset management. And so I chose the program because, I wanted to just get exposure to more than what, my day-to-day was actually about. And I was able to do that. And then post the program, I've made a pivot then into banking. So now I work in corporate and investment banking at one of the largest banks in South Africa. And it's been quite an interesting journey, I think, when I look at my role, which is a senior coverage banker. It touches on various aspects of the program, right? So the program was a reason that I pivoted into banking, but working across the various business units within the bank means that I get to draw on pretty much everything that we did on the program. And so, so I've quite enjoyed that aspect of it. So that's been quite useful.
Thank you for that. And one question that comes up often with our prospective students that are looking at different programs, they think about things like, ROI and taking the time away from work. I wanted to ask each of you, if anyone could jump in, were there other types of programs that each of you were considering when you were doing your research on programs, whether it be a part-time MBA or maybe a certificate or an executive MBA? Anyone want to jump in and really talk about what your process was and why you decided that the MSGF program was indeed the right fit for you?
I can jump in about my process. So I knew about maybe 4.5 years into my current role or my previous role. I was working as a channel manager within the energy division of S&P Global, that I really needed to level up my knowledge, my business skill, my connections, and my credentials to really move up in the finance world that I was swimming in. And there were multiple options. I was based in New York. I knew I wanted to stay in New York, but I didn't know if, I wanted to be here for 4 years, like how long it would take a lot of traditional MBA courses to complete. So that was one thing where 4-year commitment, especially in like my mid-20s, seemed like a lot for me, and I wasn't sure if that my life would allow me to do that, happily, easily. And also, honestly, if you look at the prices of some of the MBA programs in New York, like Fordham, Columbia, these are great programs. However, they will cost a pretty penny. And MSGF really stood out because of its structure. The fact that it wasn't, as Naledi mentioned, as Cian mentioned, like long, drawn out, like 3 to 4 year, like an ongoing part-time, like every single week there's a commitment. It's more of there are certain bursts of classes where you bring all of your attention to the class in New York, to that global class in Shanghai or Hong Kong, or wherever you guys have it, and you're really there committed for those like 5 to 12 days, however long. And then, of course, in the weekends, there's some coursework, there's studying, but it allows you to really heighten your focus at certain points rather than it being a long slog. So that compared with just the value compared to the other schools in the New York area, this was the best option for me, and I'm very happy that I chose it.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Sia or Naledi, were either of you considering any other types of programs at the time?
At the time, well, first, if it's a normal MBA program, I think it's too junior. So, and you cannot measure what is your investment return. Plenty of people have this kind of MBA on the street. So maybe it's slightly cheaper than the MSGF course, but I would not consider if you are in the middle of your career and you really want to advance it.
Yeah.
EMBA, the cost is too high. And the identification of the people who actually join the program is like CFO, MD levels. Not really when you're VP or directors. Not really when you're middle of 30s. That is maybe for a little bit of later stage. So I think the positioning of MSGF is very suitable. It's executive program. It's not just a normal MBA. The people who come for the program, usually they have a job. Even they don't have a job, there might be somebody before who do on certain things. There is criteria to be selected to the program. Now, so you would be surrounded by a bunch of classmates who really have those kind of skill and experience, and with a very good professors from NYU or Hong Kong UST.
Yeah.
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 All great.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with both Abby and C in terms of what they've said. I think for me as well, the consideration was the truly global nature of the program, the fact that, being where I am in South Africa, I could go, both west and east and actually learn about those markets. So for me, that was quite a great selling point, I think, for the program. Also the quality of faculty, you've got, some of the best lecturers, I think, globally, that you're learning from. And then I think as C spoke about, the quality also of your cohort, right? It's an executive program. You're meeting, people who are quite accomplished in their careers, and you get to learn from them as well and establish that network. So for me, I think that was quite important.
Thank you all. That is incredibly helpful. So I'd like to go a little bit deeper into the academic experience of the program. And I wanted to see, and Abigail, we'll start with you, is, at the time, can you think about how the curriculum or any courses that you felt were particularly valuable to you, to help you in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the courses in Shanghai were extremely valuable because it really gave a business-minded view of how to do business there, the kind of considerations, how companies work together. And for me at that stage, I really didn't have much insight on what it was like doing business in China. And then stepping in later into my global roles, I found that business is really key as I was talking to different partner vendors like Alibaba and other companies in China and that region. Just knowing how things worked, knowing like the structure of the company in reference to the government, and also having a cohort of peers who are from China, who are from Hong Kong, having that network there. To help me along with the studies and then afterwards to expand my professional network really, really helped me long after the program ended.
Thank you. Thank you for that. C, do you want to add on to that at all, or any thoughts on what you felt really helped you in the curriculum?
The first course that I did when it's November, I still remember at Kickstart in Hong Kong with macroeconomics. I forgot the professor names, but I think he's coming from the US, to talk about macro, the comparison between the US system and the Chinese system on how does that really work. I think that course is really useful because you see the program provide you two aspects. One is more generalization of macro topics, things which are day to day you may face the interest rate, inflation, but also give you some of the specialization in depth, in derivatives, in options trading. There will be one module in March that you will do in NYU. I hope it's still the same thing, or maybe there will be advancement of the program. It may change. At that time, my time, they will also do something like on the topics like I think fintech, digital assets. So it is really helpful in forming a fresh view about finance in the current world. How does that really work across from macro to specialization in digital assets on classes or the hot topics which is very popular in finance. Of course, my preference is not so much on options and derivatives because I'm not too mathematical, but I passed the course. But but I really like the macro class. Yeah,
That's great. That's great. And Nadeli, do you have any memories of specific courses that stood out to you?
Yeah, well, I think derivatives was quite interesting because it was quite challenging, but just in terms of the content and how to manage risk through derivatives. The other course that I found is quite relevant to me now is credit risk, right? Being in the banking space, so the risk management space was quite interesting to me, and now I can draw on particularly credit risk within my job and my space. And in the integrated project, I found quite interesting as well. So coming together with other members of the class to actually think about a topic and work through, something that we find interesting in our various markets as well. And so my group, it was 2 of us from South Africa and 2 from Mexico as well. And we were looking at decarbonization. And I think that's incredibly relevant in today's world that's going green. And so, yeah, for me, those would be, the courses and the modules that stood out.
Something that stood out to me as well is obviously all of us coming into a program like this come from different backgrounds, different skill sets. And some courses may have been more challenging for you than others, right? Depending on your background. Can you talk to me a little bit about for, prospective students listening in that may be concerned about how to balance a full-time job, a family, personal responsibilities with doing a master's program. And see, you've mentioned that you were expecting during the time. Can each of you talk to a little bit about how you balanced your academic workload, your personal commitments throughout the program and succeeding in a year? Maybe you could talk a little bit about if you can remember what that looked like.
In fact, I did the program because I know I want to get pregnant. and I tell you, I think now maybe it's not so common,
Yeah.
Those old days, sometimes you may hear a pregnant woman who got redundant because of pregnancy. They went for maternity leave and they come back with no job. So in my mind, that time is like, okay, well, I want to have my baby. And I don't know whether, what happened after the maternity leave. So I signed up for the program for the 1 year. In terms of the workload, to be honest with you, it's not really that heavy for the study because you have a little bit, 1 or few pages of free coursework. And now, my time, there's no AI, okay? But now you have AI. They summarize everything for you in few minutes. You read about it and you go for the class. It's a very intensive for 1 or 2 days class, but allows you to have a discussion and Q&A with the professor and also your classmates. And you have a post-coursework. And post-coursework usually is in group. Sometimes 1 or 2 courses, you may have a quiz, but it's not really that intense. So believe me, if now with AI in some of the reading, I believe that you can manage it. For work, my job at that point of time is I work with US, so it's long hours job, and also some of the weekends. And the good thing about the class, as mentioned by Abigail, some of it took place during the weekend, or sometimes during some of the public holidays that you would have. So you will have some of the days that you're having class, and it's not really that so many days of classes. As I remember, there was only 30 days. Rowan, what is how many days of class now that the program has? 30,
off
40?
the top of my head, I don't know off the top of my head, but it is, it's 6 in-person modules over the course of 1 year. I'd have to go back to the specific days, but it's correct. It's manageable and it's over 2 different calendar years, right? Which also helps with
exactly. And for me, when I was on maternity leave, no, actually not maternity leave, when I was delivering the baby, my baby was born in June. The Shanghai module is in May. I couldn't make it, so I deferred it and I make it another year. The program has certain flexibility. If you have pregnancy, for example, like mine, you can always talk to the program director and try to complete it in 2 or 3 years timeline with a personal reason. So, don't worry if it's for the workload wise, I don't think it's really that big issue. I think the thing is the investment maybe is something that I would think is good because the course fees, in fact, did not increase so much throughout these, how many years? Few years. It's slightly higher than my time before, but it's not really tremendously more expensive. And if you're looking at the courses available now with all these branded university, it's really not that cheap. So, the MSGF program, I think the pricing is reasonably priced. And for people from Hong Kong, you can also have a loan from Hong Kong government to do it. with
That's right.
covering half of the cost fees. And if you have a job, a career with a bank, the bank sometimes also would help you to pay partially the cost fees. So at the end of the day, you may pay 30%, 40% of the cost fees plus the logistics that you would need to do. But in Hong Kong, I still remember that there is hostel, nice one, sea view provided, but you have to pay a little bit minimum fees. For New York, yes, we pay a bit extra coming from Asia. But if you are based in US, I believe, this is part of your day-to-day accommodation cost. So it is really, I think it's manageable for financially investment perspective and also for the timing.
Thank you. Thank you. Those comments are helpful. Thank you. And Letty, do you have any thoughts on how in your personal experience, managed the workload and the time off from work?
Yeah, I think, Abby's based in New York, C's based in Hong Kong. So it meant that, they were just traveling I think C was traveling to New York.
Right.
And then Abby was traveling to Hong Kong. So, being where I am, being in South Africa, I had to travel to both places, right? So, so there's a lot more traveling from my perspective. And that was a bit tiring, to be honest, but I think it was worth it, right? So I had to be quite deliberate about the fact that I had to set aside time to read, come back and catch up with work, because I'd been away and I'm actually quite exhausted from the traveling. But I think the program structure is such that you have your block lectures and then you have some time before you have, let's say, an exam or something to submit, right? So that also helps in that you have some time to actually settle a bit and then look at actually getting into the actual work. So that for me was quite valuable. So that helped in balancing all of that. But I must say there were probably one or two all-nighters that I had to pull in some instances. But I think the curriculum is interesting enough, to really warrant putting in that level of work. So yeah, for me, it was probably a slightly different experience to Abby and C in terms of the travel aspect.
And while I still have you, Naledi, I do want to kind of dig into a little bit in terms of the pivot that you've made is incredibly interesting, right? I mean, in terms of, asset management to coverage banking. Wanted to, if you could, talk a little bit about how you were able to make that transition and, what kind of perspectives or confidence you gained from the program that helped potentially facilitate that for you.
Yeah, I think I benefited from the program while still in asset management as well, right? So I felt probably a bit more confident in terms of my technical expertise, not just in South African matters, but I think global matters, right? Also having drawn from the perspectives of my cohort, rather than just reading about whatever topics we'd covered. So that for me, I think even in asset management was quite useful. And then when I made the pivot, it was a direct influence from the program that actually led me to pivot into banking. And as I said, I think in the role that I'm in, I get to touch on the various aspects of the program: derivatives, corporate finance, risk management, economics. So across the board, effectively, I'm now drawing on that. So I suppose I kind of went into the interview with a bit more confidence, to say, yes, I don't have banking experience, but I actually believe I can, get into this role and hit the ground running effectively. And so for me, that's helped from that perspective.
That's great. That is an incredible story. And Abby, for you, we touched upon it a little bit earlier, but even today, you updated me about a new position that you had. So I had to change the slide quickly. Tell me a little bit about your, the different roles you've taken on at S&P, and has the MSGF program contributed to the confidence you've had in your career to kind of take on these different and new roles for yourself at your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So while I was applying and doing MSGF, I was working as a channel partner manager for the energy division, and my remit was North America. So it was very familiar and content, with my current role. But I knew that, you had to level up. You had to study more, know more to climb the ladder and do better for yourself within the company. So right after I finished the program, I had the confidence and the credentials to apply for a associate director position in the corporate office of S&P Global, and that was also a global role that was technical because it was program management. So it was a bit of a steer away from the kind of commercial partnerships that I was used to. But there, my finance knowledge from the MSGF program, and also some global knowledge from the cohort and from the various studies in Hong Kong and China has really helped in the interview as well as in the various projects working in that role. And then I recently moved back to the partnerships team, but with a more expanded remit. So now I'm the lead of the hyperscaler and cloud partnerships globally, and still MSGF is coming into play. The finance background helps me with doing project management when it comes to new partnerships and launches, and of course whenever we do business in China and Hong Kong. I think every day that I have the people, my friends now that were in the class with me on WhatsApp, that I can chat with them and ask them how things are, what the landscape is, and I have just this baseline knowledge to be able to do my work.
That's fantastic. I'm so congrats again on that on the new position. And Xian, you've had such an interesting background because you changed careers internationally. Can you tell me a little bit about, that relocation you did? You mentioned a little bit earlier, but how what you learned in the MSGF program may have supported you in making that kind of transition.
In fact, I also get promotion, internally after I done the program. So that time, the promotion process, you need to update your CV and reapply, like applying a new job for internal promotion. Of course, different banks have different process. So completing the program with also a renownable university such as NYU and Hong Kong UST, it helps. It doesn't need to, explain to people about your knowledge or specialties in this field. So it is definitely, it is very useful for job promotion, job applications, transferring locations, because you have both degrees from one from Asia, one from the US, which is renowned. So I think that will help a lot. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Just even this panel today is just representative of the diversity of the cohort, right? We are speaking to 3 senior women from across, New York, Cape Town, in Europe. I did want to ask each of you of what your experience was being part of a global classroom and how that really helped each of you develop your own network. And if you could talk to me, are you still keeping in touch with your classmates, or, it would love if you could maybe expand upon that a little bit. Xian, do you want to talk a little bit about that first in terms of, how you benefited from being in a global classroom?
I think during my class, we have Americans, Russian.
Wow.
I still remember when the war started, in Russia, he flew went to Dubai, and now he's in the US. And also Ukrainian, African, and the common thing that we all like is about finance, about making money. You group the interests all together. There is no kind of you have a common goal. The program basically group similar interests, similar goals people together, which and with the cultural background, we provide support and help from the inside from different financial markets. And how are we going to get deals? In Hong Kong, the way how we going to get a deals in IPO. Now, Hong Kong is still one of the big IPO markets for investment banking. The filing process, the pitching process, how to get those companies listed in Hong Kong or in New York, it could be very different. And you have classmates who actually work on this, and you could check, very easily, how this thing really getting done. And it's really fun because you meet people from different background.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone speak English, okay?
Right.
So not Chinese or French or different kind of language. And you liked the things in happening in this area. My time, I don't want to tell how old, working in finance is prestigious.
Yes.
Those old days when you tell people you work for investment bank are prestigious. I think now things are start to be a bit different.
Still
now we're coming out.
Still, I think still prestigious.
But the deals that we talk about, Alibaba deals, or these Chinese companies or US companies, Netflix, it really bonds everyone together very well. Even today, I'm still looking at the Russian traders trading on indexes every day, CFDs on our chat group, MSGF alumni group, that we see all these topics that we argue, sometimes debate on the WhatsApp. Of course, it happens because we have a different perspective towards politics, towards finance, towards what we should do, what we should not do in investment. But it provides a positive, constructive challenge. And this is important, bringing people from different perspectives to come together, to enable a platform for us to challenge each other. And coming from Asia, I want to say we are not good in this because Asian people are very conform, When people tell us things, we listen. When people say things to us, we take the orders. But in the West, it's not like this. It is a way for Asian people to really open our mind and say we could challenge the point. We could not agree with what we have been told. Agree to disagree or disagree to agree. That can take place, and that is valuable given the world today that we are at.
Such an interesting perspective. Abigail, what about you? Can you talk to me a little bit about how you experienced the network in your classroom, in your cohort?
Absolutely. I made some of my best friends through this program. We still talk today. So we have the MSGF alumni group chat that's for hey, how's everyone doing? Happy birthday. And then there's the other group chat where we update each other on our lives. It's been such an amazing experience to just meet all these people that I would never have crossed paths with. They were in Hong Kong, they were in China, they were in Korea. And, you really got time to bond because it's not a standard part-time master's where you're together looking at a board for 3 hours and then goodbye, I gotta go home. You're in Hong Kong, you're in Abu Dhabi, you're in New York City with these amazing people. So you go out, you talk about things, you learn about each other's lives, and it's really just calling it a network, I feel kind of distances it from what it really is. They're friends. They're my best of friends now. And it's really been amazing to have that additional layer of connection and also of support when you're going through this program. You need study buddies, you need someone to call at 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. their time. It's hey, how did you figure this out? They're there for you. And I'm so happy that I think this was one of the things that I'm always very grateful for is that I have all these new friends and now more reasons to go to Korea and Hong Kong and China.
That's great. Thank you. That's wonderful to hear that. It was positive. Naledi, how about you?
Yeah, so made some friends through the program, and I think it's that both C and Abby were talking about the fact that you get to share, and to get to know people from different backgrounds, and so that for me was quite special about the program. Going out in New York, going out in Hong Kong, learning about the new spaces with people who actually know those spaces and can tell you a bit more about them. And yeah, I think, just even in class, the case studies, looking at the case studies and looking at them from different perspectives with people sharing, with people, really giving you their perspective. And I think for me, it's shaped the way I think about finance, and that sometimes we can get so stuck in, oh, this is the right way of doing things. But once you have that kind of diverse cohort, you get to consider different perspectives and how things are done in different parts of the world as well. And that, your way is not necessarily the right way, and maybe, there are other factors to consider as well. So, it's being in the WhatsApp group, it's actually being in class with these guys that's actually enriched, I think, my experience just in life in general, in terms of getting to know new people, but also in terms of how I think about, the world of finance altogether.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And just in terms of just thinking about time, there are just a couple questions that have come through from the participants that are really interesting questions. And one question is that someone asked if they have not come from a more traditional finance background. Is the program still accessible to professionals from different industries or functions? Wanted to, if you could, I have some thoughts on my own, but wanted to see if any of you would like to answer that question, or maybe you had some classmates
Sure.
that had a little bit of a different background.
For myself, I come from traditional banking background. So how I got into banking, I was intern with UBS in investment bank after the Lehman crisis. Sorry, I'm in the office, so they have here some background noise. So I was in UBS for 5 years. And then, with the traditional intern program whereby you do the assessment, you do the test. And I was applying for equity sales, but I did not get in because that time there was no job after the Lehman crisis. All the front office job was cut. There's only a back office in compliance because there were a lot of investigations, enforcement from DOJ under the Obama terms, okay? Not now under Trump. So I got in there in traditional banking, doing compliance for investment bank, then covering for private banking, so UBS, and then slowly expanded my coverage to asset management. But I feel that is not enough because I just was a degree student, and I see that there is a need to enhance specializing in finance instead of doing MBA. If you want to really do it in banking, because MBA, some of these courses are not so relevant when you want to deal with, IPO, bond issuance, derivatives, options. These are the basic that you need to have when you want to work for a bank. Credit, right? This is like regular topics that you will come in. But I got headhunted to Standard Chartered. So I was there handling the same topics. And I start to feel like this is not really too safe to be, always be in one area specializing, but not able to switch to other discipline. And this program came into my mind. And I was thinking, okay, maybe one day I want to do coverage. I want to do sales. So I took that. But now, I'm more with the front line, but it provides you a perspective. How does the front line works? How does function works? How does traditional banking works? And what kind of risks you may have if you join a fintech, crypto kind of institutions or funds company? Because we also have classmates who are in funds, PE funds, hedge funds, startups. Sometimes they are good. Sometimes things go bankrupt. They lost their job. This is a finance world. Everyone take risks. It would be naive if I answer you,
Sure.
Even with the program, you will not lose your job or you will guarantee have a job. Because if you are familiar with finance investment, everything is risk. You need to balance. You need to know your time, your money investment, and what you get from it. And you need to be very clear when you sign up for this 1 year. What do you want to achieve? What are the KPIs? And where do you see yourself in this 1 or 3 years? This is not a program, or this is not the time to say that, you have nothing to do. You do an MBA, and it doesn't really matter where you go after this MBA. It needs to be very clear set up on this. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Did Naledi or Abby, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. I can add. So my undergraduate degree was business administration. So like I took like finance 101 like my freshman year, and then I did like management strategy and focused on other things that didn't put me into anything like hard anything truly mathematical. And really going into the workforce, I realized that I was really missing like fundamental technical expertise in finance. And that was like a point that really worried me, getting a master's of science in global finance. But the first module was really intensive, and it taught you from the ground up the basic foundations of finance. So it sort of triggered some memories of what I learned like 6 years ago, 7, 8 years ago, back in undergraduate, but also it built upon that really quickly. So the 3 hour crash course is really like, oh, I think I remember this, to like applying it to the real world in ways that I never did when I was still a teenager. I think even if you don't have a clear, pure finance background, it's still okay for you. Now, there's definitely a level of study. Like I had to, look up some terms that my classmates didn't need to look up, but it's doable. It's not impossible. And like, even though my background was business, so even, there was like a touch of finance there. I had classmates and people I know from previous cohorts, their background was in tech, journalism. So it's you don't need to like know how to do evaluation off the top of your head to be able to take this course. They will teach you, or you'll find a way. Like you're in the classroom where you're going to have a couple of people who can have a traditional finance background. So it's not difficult at all to catch up. I promise you, if you have the dedication and the time, then the program will find its way for you.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. That's perfect. And I just reiterate that you do not have to be sitting in a traditional financial services role to apply to the program. We've over the past 10 plus years of the program, we've had lawyers, we've had people that work in corporate finance roles, in non-financial services companies. We've had professionals whose work somehow intersects with finance. I think the important thing to note is that in your application is just showing a clear rationale for the program in terms of why global finance is important for your career, what exposure you may already have, or how you plan to use the program professionally. So that's really helpful.
I remember that during my term, there was one lady who is from pharmaceutical sector.
Yeah.
So I think, Broven, you bring the points, because during the interview, be clear, how you want to utilize the program, to where you want to heading to. You could be say that you want to be a corporate CFO, I don't know, but everyone have a different agenda.
Yeah.
But I don't think, my sharing is from a traditional banking perspective, but we do have people who are from non-financial sector at all. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Naledi, I didn't ask you about your, if you wanted there was anything you wanted to add to that in terms of
Yeah, just that, there were classmates who were from different backgrounds. So tech, my one friend is in tech, and she had financial services clients in her consulting work. And so she thought, the program would be quite useful for that. The other friend of mine is in steel manufacturing, and he thought, he runs his own businesses. And he thought, understanding the finance aspect of it would come in quite handy in leading his organizations. And so, so even if you don't have, traditional finance background, it comes in quite handy. And if you're clear about, what you want to do with it, just as the rest of the panel has said, then that's fantastic. If you can actually, see how it helps you in enhancing what you already do or pivoting into the space that you want to go into.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I can't believe it's almost at the hour. So I just wanted to thank everyone for attending. Just some quick next steps is, if you haven't done so already, please do submit a preliminary information form. It's available on our website. It is takes 2 minutes to submit some basic information with your resume. And this is just the first step in the process. We encourage you to speak to one of our admissions teams with any questions you may have about the program. We do have our next upcoming deadline is coming up on June 30th. And that is not our final deadline, but it is our next deadline. And that is we are now currently recruiting for the class starting this November of 2026. We have one intake per year, and we definitely encourage your application. I wanted to take a moment to thank you all for your participation today. We are so thrilled to have such wonderful alumni represent our program. And thank you so much for your time today. And wonderful. And if anyone's asking, hopefully they can reach out to you. Is LinkedIn the best way to connect with you if people want to talk to you?
Sure.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Just say that you are interested to do this program, you want to
That-
chat, or we can do a Zoom call,
That's so helpful. Thank you so much, all of you, and happy summer. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
The winter
Bye.
here, so bye.
That's true. Apologies.
No problem.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.